Welcome back to the podcast, Theater Criticism 101. I'm your host, Muhammad Abdel, and this is our final episode, tying it all together. The final Mark Fisher reading, Chapter 12, How to Write About Acting, describes the two challenges of how to be as precise as possible when writing about the work of actors. Those challenges are accurately identifying what they brought to the role while expressing it with the best words available. Fisher goes on to say you define good acting by identifying what the actor is doing on a moment-movement basis and weighing this against your personal idea of what constitutes good acting. Now, at this point of the course, practically all the readings are done. All the information that we're going to be absorbed, whether it is from text or whether it's from Karen herself through virtual classroom discussions, are now over. The 14 of us enrolled in this Dart 3P9 form classroom have arrived at the end of our journey as theater critics. At least as far as that journey will take us in the classroom. Although I might be a little too embarrassed to share my Meadow review, I certainly will share with you my Seawall review. Simon Stephen's Seawall, starring Andrew Scott, is a play about a man essentially telling his life story to the camera, which in this case is the audience. Before I read the review, I'm just going to make note of a comment left by Karen after she marked and returned the review. Ladies and gentlemen, in the words of Dr. Karen Fricker, you've arrived as a theater critic. Without a doubt, it certainly feels like an accomplishment, to say the least, to have developed, in my opinion, so dramatically in such a short amount of time. Now, without any further ado, my Seawall review. Simon Stephen's Seawall, a play that centers around a man reflecting on God and family, proves a gem amongst gems. Nothing short of a masterpiece. Written and directed by Stephens, the 32-minute monologue is performed by Andrew Scott and is captured on camera using a single long shot. Conveniently, the performance was filmed in the same building as Stephens' office, in a photography studio floors above. Scott, wearing a black-collared Lacoste shirt and light blue jeans, plays a man named Alex, who is directly addressing the audience through the camera. Alex takes the viewer on a journey that somehow covers every major aspect of life, all in a matter of a half hour. The first impression given of Alex is one of a quirky and cheerful nature, jumping from topic to topic without revealing any clear significance. By the play's end, however, I was left in complete shock. Shocked by the development of the story, shocked by the way it was conveyed and how everything interconnected, and, above all else, shocked by how strongly I felt about it all. Scott's ability to completely reverse moods that the viewer can perceive from one moment to the next is truly world-class. Composed yet afflicted, calm but erratic, ardent and frigid. The audience is barraged with wildly contrasting expressions in a matter of seconds. Describing Scott as an emotional acrobat would perhaps be a suitable description. At one point, Alex recalls and describes the natural sensation showering him during a beach trip, doing so in a spectacle of vivid physicality. Twirling with his arms extended, he grabs the sun's warmth, spreading it across his body as his opposing hand scoops from the Mediterranean Sea, smothering himself with a refreshing bath. After my initial bewilderment, I rewatched the piece immediately to ensure nothing was missed. To my surprise, it was even better the second time. During one specific part, for example, Alex's face shines with a gleeful recollection as his body springs about with the vigor of a lively child. Not 5 seconds later, that man is replaced by a hollow presence, barely kept upright by shriveled shoulders, with his lips, eyes, and cheeks racing to the floor beneath him. From fondness to despair, all in the blink of an eye. Only by its conclusion is the viewer able to fully make sense of the captivating and heartfelt presentation of a man with a hole piercing his body. Every person need bear witness to the excellence that is Seawall. Now, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but this was certainly my best review thus far. Now, mind you, something that I truly put into practice for this review was revision and editing. Because we had just read how to write about famous actors, and if you aren't familiar with Andrew Scott, he was the villain in the hit series Sherlock, where he played Moriarty against Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock Holmes. Now, my initial review went something along the lines of, if you're anything like me, and let's hope you're not, the first thing that came to your mind when you started Seawall was Moriarty. Now, this wasn't simply a shout out to the character of the BBC series, but more so was used as a means of introducing and familiarizing the review reader with Andrew Scott and his acting style. However, after a few revisions, it was pretty clear that my description of the actual performance given by Scott in Seawall was more than ample to familiarize the viewer with his acting style, making the Sherlock and Moriarty references of early obsolete. Now, as we're nearing the end of the series, it's important that I give my 3 biggest takeaways from theater criticism. Number 1, edit. I really can't stress this enough, and as Karen says earlier, as I mentioned earlier, half of good writing is editing. It really might be the most important part. Reviewing, revising, editing your work will, among other things, allow you the greatest opportunity to distinguish your personal input from the actual artistic aim set forth by theater makers. You may also find that after a little bit of time has passed, your original perspective doesn't reflect how you now feel about the piece, whether in whole or in part. Your ability to connect the piece to the world around you may certainly be abated with more time to reflect on how this piece speaks to any cultural, social, or political significance. You may find an argument you originally thought was profound was actually pretty baseless. My second biggest takeaway would be Manzoni's 3 questions. Understanding these questions are fundamental to effectively reviewing and critiquing theater. Accurately identifying the aim of theater makers with respect to what they were aiming to do, how well they did it, and if it was worth doing is the heart and soul of what it really means to be a theater critic. Failing to identify the aim runs the risk of judging the piece on merits other than what it sets out to achieve, failing to effectively critique the piece. And my final big takeaway from Dart 3P94 theater criticism is to use your own voice. Be confident that you can do it, because if you are interested in it and you have involved yourself in it, chances are you deserve to be and belong in the world of theater criticism. As I mentioned earlier, Fisher recommends to write in the voice that most closely resembles your own natural speech pattern. He also mentions to mind your words as to let the show quality dictate the form and language of the review. This is a way to pay homage to the production while relaying some of its flavor to the reader. In my Seawall review, for example, I mention a man with a hole piercing his body. This language isn't only a motif of the play, but it also provides a foreshadowing effect of what the viewer can expect from the play itself. It seems as though we've reached the end of our journey together through this podcast, Theater Criticism 101. I'm your host, Mohammed Abdel, and it was my pleasure taking you through my experience of what it was for me to develop as a theater critic and how much I learned in the process. Thank you very much for listening, and I really do hope you enjoyed it.